Are you positive that the 100% Arabica you just scooped into your cafeteria is actually entirely coffee? You reach for that bag every single morning, relying on it to jumpstart your brain before the morning commute, without ever questioning what's really inside. But here is the stark industrial truth that is not advertised on the packet. Ground coffee is one of the most commonly adulterated food products on the planet. Why? Because once coffee is roasted and ground, it is a uniform brown powder, making it ridiculously easy to bulk up with cheaper fillers that are impossible to detect with the human eye. We are talking about commercial ground coffee found supermarkets right now being bulked out with roasted corn, barley, soybeans, wheat, and even twigs and sticks. Once these are roasted and ground, they are invisible in the mix. If you watch this to the end, I promise you will never look at your morning cup the same way again. You will find out which common fillers, from roasted barley to actual sticks, are likely sitting in your supermarket coffee right now. Which massive brands sell premium coffee that has never been tested for carcinogens or pesticides? How most decaf in the UK is processed, using a chemical banned in paint strippers. And by the end, I will give you a list of the exact brands you should be buying that are verifiably 100% pure. Trust me, the final revelation about origin fraud is going to leave you staggered. Before we name the brands sitting in your cupboard, let us get some base knowledge down. Coffee is not just a bean, it is a commodity open to massive abuse. There is a race to the bottom happening in the supermarket aisles. To sell coffee at the lowest possible price, competing with store brands like Aldi or Tesco's cheapest, companies must source the cheapest possible raw materials. The cheapest beans on the global market are lower grade, often the ones rejected by specialty buyers. This includes defective, broken or improperly stored beans that are far more prone to mould and contamination. Think of it like buying mincemeat. If you buy the premium, traceable, extra lean Aberdeen Angus, you generally know what is in it. If you buy the cheapest, unbranded mystery meat that's 30% fat, you are getting the offcuts nobody else wanted. Cheap coffee works the same way, but it's all ground into the same uniform dust. There is a huge lack of transparency here. These mass-market brands source from vast commodity pools, meaning the origin, quality, and even how recently it was roasted can change drastically from batch to batch. Yet the packaging stays exactly the same. And the two biggest hidden issues are chemical and natural contaminants. First, mycotoxins. These are toxic compounds produced by molds that grow on coffee beans during harvesting, processing, and transport. The primary ones, like ochratoxin A, are classified as probable human carcinogens. If the beans are not dried quickly enough or stored in humid, improper conditions, the mold grows. In fact, one study found that a shocking 90% of green coffee beans tested were contaminated with mold. Second, the grinding process itself is the ultimate cloak for fraud. When you buy pre-ground coffee, you are operating entirely on trust. You cannot see the twig, the roasted corn kernel, or the soybean. Visual inspection is useless. Unless a company is specifically testing for these fillers using sophisticated chemical tests, they and you have no idea if the bag contains 100% coffee or 80% coffee mixed with 20% agricultural waste. For anyone with allergies to soy or wheat, drinking coffee that is secretly mixed with those fillers could cause a serious reaction from a product that lists only coffee as its ingredient. Let us start dragging these mass-market brands into the light. We will begin with the everyday staples and work our way up to the premium names that are taking you for a ride. First up, we have to talk about the cheapest options on the British shelves, specifically Aldi's Everyday Essentials and Tesco's Stockwell & Co. Ground coffee. These brands compete on one metric only: rock-bottom pricing. When you are buying a massive bag of ground coffee for a fraction of the cost of a premium brand, you are participating in what economists call the race to the bottom. To hit these incredibly low price points, contract suppliers source the lowest grade commodity beans available on the global market. These are the beans rejected by specialty roasters, broken, deformed, and often stored in highly humid conditions that are perfect breeding grounds for mould. Neither Aldi nor Tesco publishes independent, third-party lab testing for mycotoxins or heavy metals for these budget lines. If a multi-billion-pound supermarket chain has the resources to test every single batch and give you that transparency but chooses not to, you have to ask yourself why. It leaves you with zero data. You are essentially drinking a mystery commodity stream that changes from month to month based entirely on which global supplier was the cheapest that week. It tastes incredibly bitter and burnt, a profile designed intentionally to mask the defects of the low-grade Robusta beans hiding inside. It is a massive rip-off because you are sacrificing safety and purity just to save a few quid on your morning routine. If you think the big household names are any better, think again. Let us talk about Nescafe Original, particularly their instant line, which is practically an institution in British staff rooms and kitchens. Owned by Nestlé, a multinational giant turning over billions, Nescafe is built on immense volume. Instant coffee is historically the single most vulnerable category for filler fraud. Because the beans are processed, brewed, sprayed, or freeze-dried into a fine powder or tiny granules, there is absolutely no physical trace of a coffee bean left. It is remarkably easy for supply chains to introduce processed chicory, barley, or cereal fillers that mimic the solubility and color of coffee. Landmark studies published in journals like Foods have repeatedly detailed how sophisticated liquid chromatography tests are required to detect carbohydrate markers in mass-market instant coffee, because your eyes and taste buds simply cannot spot the dilution. When prices of raw coffee spike on the global stock exchange, the commercial incentive to bulk up instant powder goes through the roof. With Nescafe Original, you are paying a premium for the brand name and the familiar red mug in the adverts. But what you are actually getting is an opaque commodity product with zero farm-level traceability. It is completely stale by design, having undergone massive industrial processing long before it ever sits in your mug. Speaking of ancient household brands, we have to look at Kenco Smooth and Maxwell House, which you can find in every single Morrisons and Asda across the country. Kenco is owned by Jacobs Douwe Egberts, another titanic multinational coffee corporation. These brands survive entirely on nostalgia and convenience. They sell huge tins and jars designed to sit in your larder for weeks, if not months. This introduces the massive problem of oxidation. The second coffee is ground or processed. Its surface area multiplies by thousands, exposing it to oxygen. Within minutes, the volatile oils that give coffee its character dissipate, leaving behind stale, oxidized lipids. When you drink Kenco Smooth or Maxwell House from a massive tub that has been opened 20 times, you are consuming deeply oxidized coffee that has lost its nutritional benefits and antioxidants. More importantly, these brands offer absolute zero disclosure when it comes to pesticide residues or glyphosate. Coffee is one of the most heavily chemically treated crops in the world, sprayed with synthetic fungicides and herbicides to maximize yield. When independent watchdogs like the Clean Label Project run multi-product screenings, they consistently find trace contaminants across these mass-market, untraceable commodity blends. The verdict is simple. You are drinking an oxidized chemical gamble wrapped in a comforting, familiar label. If you are currently looking at your own kitchen cupboard and feeling a bit uneasy, click that subscribe button right now, because it gets significantly harsher from here. Let us move to the premium supermarket aisle and look at Starbucks House Blend, the bagged ground coffee you buy in Sainsbury's or Waitrose when you want to treat yourself. Starbucks commands a massive price premium because consumers associate it with the luxury of the high street cafe experience and their heavily marketed coffee and farmer equity sustainability program. However, the gap between marketing and reality is stark. In recent class action litigation and independent investigative reports, major questions have been raised about the validity of ethical sourcing claims within these mass-scale supply chains, with allegations of hazardous working conditions surfacing on certified farms abroad. Starbucks firmly maintains they audit heavily and handle violations strictly, but it proves that big corporate labels are not a guarantee. More shockingly, independent lab testing commissioned by consumer advocacy groups on premium dark roasts has frequently flagged the presence of volatile compounds and high levels of acrylamide. Acrylamide is a chemical that forms naturally during high heat roasting. Because Starbucks is famous for its incredibly dark, intense roast profile, it alters the chemical composition of the bean. While dark roasting can reduce certain mycotoxins, it can also be used as an industry trick to incinerate any flavor defects in low-quality beans, leaving you with a smoky, bitter taste that mimics strength, but actually just tastes like carbon. You are paying top-tier prices for an industrial roast that hides behind a green mermaid logo, but the absolute worst offender, the most shocking practice sitting on British supermarket shelves right now, is the decaf solvent scandal, and it implicates almost every standard supermarket decaf brand. From Kenco Decaf to generic supermarket private labels. Millions of Brits drink decaf for health reasons, perhaps to manage blood pressure or anxiety. But how do you think they get the caffeine out of the bean? The most common commercial method is called the direct solvent or European method, and it uses a chemical called methylene chloride to literally strip the caffeine away. Methylene chloride is an industrial solvent that was recently banned by environmental agencies for consumer use in paint strippers because it is a known hazard and a likely human carcinogen. Yet, food regulations still allow trace residues of this exact chemical in your morning decaf. The industry argues the levels are entirely safe, but consumer groups are actively petitioning for an absolute ban because completely clean, water-based alternatives exist. If your bag of decaf does not explicitly state Swiss water process or CO2 process on the front, it has almost certainly been bathed in a chemical solvent banned from hardware store shelves. It is the ultimate corporate shortcut, using a toxic paint stripping chemical to process a health product, simply because it is cheaper than using pure water. You think you are making a healthy choice, but you are dropping a chemically rinsed bean right into your mug. And now, what it was worth watching all the way through for. We have finished looking at the industrial sludge, the chemical solvents, and the corporate cutting of corners. It is time for the antidote. There are exceptional coffee roasters right here in the UK that reject the race to the bottom, operate with absolute transparency, and deliver a product that is verifiably 100% clean, pure coffee. This is where your money should actually be going. Let us start with the most mainstream accessible entry point on the high street, which you can pick up on your weekly shop at Sainsbury's, Ocado, or Waitrose. Union hand-roasted coffee. Union was founded by scientists who brought an analytical, precision-focused mindset to the British coffee scene. They completely bypass the opaque global commodity auctions and buy directly from smallholder farmers through their own strict union direct trade model. This ensures complete, unbroken traceability back to the specific cooperative and the specific hillside where the cherries were picked. Because they pay well above the standard commodity price, their farmers can afford meticulous sorting, proper washing, and quick, thorough elevated solar drying. This precision practically eliminates the ambient moisture traps where dangerous mould and mycotoxins start to develop. In terms of texture and taste, switching from mass-market brands to Union is like moving from a cheap, instant gravy mix to a rich, homemade jus. It is smooth, naturally sweet, and carries none of that burnt, carbonized bitterness used by commodity brands to mask defective beans. Price-wise, a bag of Union will set you back around £6 to £7, which translates to roughly 25 to 30 pence per cup. When you compare that to the complete lack of safety testing and stale profile of a £5 corporate bulk tub, the tiny price difference completely justifies itself. If you want to step up the budget slightly and purchase from a brand that treats chemical purity as an absolute religious dogma, you need to look at Mindful Coffee. Based right here in London and widely available online and via major British health platforms, Mindful Coffee sources single-sol origin specialty beans from high-altitude organic cooperatives, primarily in Honduras. They don't just rely on the organic stamp to prove their product is clean. They independently lab test every single batch for mycotoxins and publish their verified certificates of analysis for the public to inspect. They are testing explicitly for ochratoxin A and aflatoxin B1, ensuring that the levels are consistently way below even the strictest European food safety cutoffs. Drinking their flagship Focus blend provides a remarkably clean, crisp sensory experience with zero underlying chemical harshness or synthetic aftertaste. It digests beautifully, entirely skipping the jittery, acidic stomach irritation caused by lower-grade, mould-contaminated Robusta beans. At approximately £10 for a 250-gram bag, it breaks down to about 40 pence a cup. That is a fraction of what you would pay for a single high-street coffee shop brew, and you are receiving a laboratory-verified guarantee that you are not microdosing your body with natural fungal carcinogens. Next, we have the gold standard of health-optimized coffee in the UK market. Balance Coffee. Founded by a veteran of the British specialty coffee industry who grew completely disillusioned with the hidden contaminants in commercial supply chains, Balance Coffee operates at a level most brands can't even touch. They source exclusively Soil Association organic certified Arabica beans and subject every single shipment to a rigorous 9-point independent laboratory testing regime. They screen for mould, mycotoxins, heavy metals like arsenic and lead, and over 500 separate pesticide residues, including glyphosate. They even tailor their roasting protocol to meticulously balance the chemical profile, ensuring they maximize the healthy, natural, chlorogenic acid antioxidants while actively keeping toxic acrylamide levels at the absolute minimum. When you brew their Stability blend, the aroma is distinctly vibrant, filling the room with clean notes of stone fruit and chocolate, rather than the burnt rubber smell of cheap commodity canisters. It has an ultra-clean, syrupy mouth feel that feels remarkably pure. It is a premium product, costing around £15 per bag, or roughly 60 pence per serving. If you have any underlying health sensitivities, chronic inflammation, or simply want the peace of mind that your daily habit is actively supporting your longevity rather than challenging it, this is the investment to make. Finally, for the absolute peak alternative that delivers massive health benefits without any chemical compromises, we have Exhale Coffee. Operating out of London, Exhale is a certified B Corp that treats coffee not as a vehicle for caffeine, but as a genuine functional superfood. They hold the Soil Association Organic Badge, use completely plastic-free compostable packaging, and run their beans through a ruthless battery of independent laboratory screenings. They don't just test to keep the bad stuff out, they scientifically test to ensure the good stuff stays in, verifying that their light to medium roasting process preserves massive concentrations of polyphenols and vitamins. If you drink their Swiss water process decaf, you are getting an absolute masterclass in purity. They completely ban the paint-stripping methylene chloride chemical solvent, using nothing but pure water to gently remove the caffeine while leaving the molecular structure of the clean coffee entirely intact. The downside is that Exhale is premium and highly sought after, meaning you have to order it directly online or through specialty eco-marketplaces. But when you sip it, the complete absence of toxic residues means you get a pure, sustained energy lift without any of the heavy crashes, headaches, or heart palpitations associated with commodity coffee. It is the ultimate reward for your health, proving that real coffee doesn't need to hide behind synthetic chemicals or corporate smoke and mirrors. To ensure you never get conned by the multi-billion-pound supermarket coffee cartels again, you need to memorize these 6 golden rules before your next trip to Tesco, Sainsbury's, or Asda. Rule 1. Buy whole bean coffee, never pre-ground. Whole beans are impossible to adulterate with roasted barley, corn, or twigs because you cannot fake the physical shape of a roasted coffee bean, and grinding fresh at home completely eliminates the threat of filler fraud. Rule 2. Look for the Soil Association organic logo on the packet. Coffee is one of the most heavily chemically treated crops on Earth, and forcing yourself to buy organic instantly shields you from the heavy loads of synthetic pesticides and glyphosate found across conventional commodity crops. Rule 3. Demand the words Swiss water process or CO2 process on the front of any decaf bag. If a decaf packet does not explicitly name a chemical-free extraction method, you are effectively buying beans that have been washed in methylene chloride, the exact same hazardous industrial solvent banned in consumer paint strippers. Rule 4. Check for a specific roasting date and single origin estate rather than a generic regional blend. Opaque labels like Rich Italian Roast or Everyday Blend are corporate code for a mixed dumping ground of low-grade, mold-prone commodity beans sourced from completely untraceable global pools. Rule 5. Seek out independent laboratory validation for mycotoxins and heavy metals. Reputable British brands will gladly point you to accredited third-party test certificates from labs like Eurofins to prove their batches are entirely free from carcinogenic fungal toxins. Rule 6. Completely avoid pre-flavored hazelnut, vanilla, or caramel coffees. These products are a massive chemical trap where low-grade, highly defective beans are sprayed with synthetic flavoring agents and propylene glycol carrier solvents to intentionally trick your taste buds and cover up rancid raw materials. The entire global coffee industry is built on a foundation of minimal disclosure and massive commodity pooling, counting on the fact that once everything is ground into a brown powder, you will simply trust the brand name on the front. By switching from industrial, pre-ground mass-market tins to fresh, traceable, whole-bean specialty roasts, you shift from being a victim of clever marketing to an informed consumer taking control of their health. Your daily coffee is likely the most consistent, recurring ritual of your entire life, meaning your cumulative exposure to whatever is hiding in that mug is greater than almost any other item in your kitchen pantry. You absolutely deserve a morning cup that is verifiably clean, chemical-free, and 100% pure coffee. Thank you so much for sticking with me through this entire investigation. If you have a friend or a family member who blindly scoops massive bulk canisters of cheap supermarket coffee every single day, please share this video with them right now. They deserve to know the truth about what they are drinking. I want to hear from you down in the comments section below. Look at your kitchen counter right now and tell me exactly which brand of coffee is sitting in your home. Are you drinking clean, water-processed whole beans, or have you been caught out by the industrial solvent decaf trap? If you want to keep protecting your health and exposing the massive corporate deceptions hiding on British supermarket shelves, make sure to click on our next video breaking down the dark truths of the commercial herbal tea market. Stop drinking